Today is May 21st, 2026, and I am here with Patrick Sabongui. I'm saying it in my French accent, but I don't know if that's necessarily how you would say it.
That was exceptional. A+.
I'm very excited to talk with you today because you had submitted this very interesting article for Theater Topics. And this is going to be specifically for Theater Topics Online, which I am currently the editor of. Before we get into the content of this article, which I'm hoping these viewers right now have read through, bare minimum, skimmed through to get a sense of what we're about to be talking about, because it might get a little technical. I would love for you to offer some of your self-introduction, as you have an illustrious career in TV, film, and as a former professor at Brooklyn College, and plus an international background, which I also think is fantastic and can bring so much to students' academic awareness of the world. Please, Patrick, please let us know more about who you are, what you do, and why you do it.
Thank you, Dr. Barfield. I appreciate the introduction, and I am excited about the conversation. And thank you for your interest in my work. And I think what I'm excited about in this article is that it's kind of a culmination of all the disparate experiences that I've collected over my academic and professional careers. So I'm an Egyptian Canadian kid from Montreal, and I came up, as a student athlete, martial artist, stumbled into acting, and from my interest in acting and physical expression, I fell into stunts. Pardon the pun. So that background kind of framed my understanding of the world of storytelling, to be honest. I've always seen storytelling as a very physical endeavor. And as an athlete has to adapt to any sport or physical environment, from the beginning, I saw the art of self-expression as an extension of the physical self. And so whether I was pursuing a career on the stage or as an actor in film and television, or as a stunt performer in film and television, it was always just an extension of how can I use this tool to tell this story. And so, I mean, by way of, introduction, sure. I had, for lack of a better word, had a dope career. It's not lost on me how cool the stuff that I've gotten to do is. And it's not, for whatever reason, I've been lucky. I've worked very hard. I've hustled and I've grinded, but I've worked on some very cool television shows. I've worked on some of the biggest feature films that the industry produced. I've worked on blockbuster action films. I've worked on independent, impactful, socially conscious, politically inclined films, all over Canada, the United States. I worked in Romania on a film about, refugees from Armenia who went to Russia and ended up in America. So I have, I've played Americans, Canadians. I've played South Asians. I've played Middle Easterners. I've played police officers and police captains and criminals and drug dealers and terrorists and counter-terrorist officers. I've had the opportunity to immerse myself in the life experiences of many different identities. And so all over that time, I've carried with me this need and this passion for sharing what I learned about the world that I love with the next generation of artists. And so that's what led me to academia. That's what led me to teaching. And for the last 6 years, I was the head of BFA acting at Brooklyn College, where I really had opportunity to expand and explore and build systems and build curriculum that prepared the student actor for the current state of the industry. And I think that's what brought me to this technology, what brought me and inspired me to write this article that captured the moment, the kind of intersection where I was like, this is where technology meets the moment and where theater practitioners can leverage technology not to evolve out of the live theater performance that they are passionate about, but to deepen and enrich their training in that for that medium.
The technology that we're referencing here is the Blackmagic Atom, ATEM. So I do have an image that I'd like to present first that is essentially from the Blackmagic's website really quickly.
Okay. Cool.
And I'd love to go more into your article in a moment, but I think that it's important for us to have some point of reference here. What I'm showing right here, just so the viewers have a context here, this is the Blackmagic Atom, and I know that they have different styles and types, I'm sure, depending on how much you want to invest. But would you mind describing here what we're looking at and how you are using it in the classroom for actor training, as you indicate in your article?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So what we're looking at is the little black device that has all these buttons on it is essentially a hub for all of the various recording equipment. And you see all these cables running into it, and a couple of the cables are running out. And these larger buttons, where you see the number 1 is lit up, and then you see the operator's finger hovering over the 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 are the number of cameras that are inputting into this hub. And it's so straightforward that I take about 15 seconds in class to brief a student on, okay, you are now the operator. You're the live editor. We call it the in-class DJ. And so you get to DJ which camera is displayed on the monitor. So these 4 buttons they indicate that you can have up to 4 cameras running into the switcher. And then a couple of these cables run out to a monitor. And then they've got this one cable that's running to
the monitor for people that may not understand. Just real quick, I'm just
right.
This is her monitor, but it looks like you can have another monitor that the actors would see. Is that correct?
I mean, in class, what I typically do is this little monitor, I run it to the big AV cart that you have in class, or so even the projector.
And we have some images of that. Yep.
Yeah. So they can see that as what would be the live broadcast. Okay. This is the final product of the edit. What they have here as the computer monitor could be, so they've had on a display that I don't recognize, and maybe it's a streaming service, but there's also a display that the Atom puts out that shows all 3 or 4 cameras are seeing.
Like. Yeah.
And then
I'll show that in a second. Yeah.
Yeah. And then what the next image might be. And so you can anticipate, okay, camera 1 is getting an interesting shot, but right now we're looking at camera 4, and right around this line of dialogue where the focus should be on actor A, I'm going to switch to camera 1. And then camera 1 would then broadcast onto the main monitor what everyone is seeing. There are also 2 little cables off to the left here, which are thinner than the HDMI cables. And those 2 cables are audio cables. Yeah.
Right.
So you can have
those are
2
mini jacks. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So those capture audio. You can either have 2 kind of lavalier mics, but what I end up doing is having 2 shotgun mics that cover a wide surface area of the space, and so they capture either isolated or general audio. And the other cool factor that you don't see on the screen is that the Atom will capture all the individual feeds, so every individual camera, every individual microphone, but it'll also capture the live edit. So
Okay.
what you captured on the
Right.
day, going camera 1, camera 4, camera 2, camera 1, camera 3, it'll capture that continuously, but separately, it'll capture every single camera and each microphone separately, so that if you want to tidy it up, and if a camera got funky or that you missed the edit or one microphone was funky, you can clean it up and you actually have every isolated file that you can reassemble some kind of edit.
Okay, so from that bit, because that was just the generic site from the Blackmagic site itself, what
Yeah.
I'd like to do is you sent over some images from your class in action, right?
Sure.
And before I show that, I want to reference your article in which one of your students said, and this ties into some of what you're describing about the live editing, about almost as if an improvisational technology
Yep.
with human actors kind of talking back and forth to each other through choosing the angle in the moment, right? It's not playback, it is live, as you keep emphasizing. So one of your students says that that they describe the experience as filmmaking jazz, and noting that the camera became another scene partner whose attention actively shaped the moment. So I found that to be a particularly interesting description of this.
So what we're looking at, this is a workshop at the Guthrie Theater, and these are all Guthrie Theater students. And this workshop was literally about the intersection between theater performance and recorded media performance. What we're looking at on the right is a large smart monitor that is displaying.
The back of it.
Yeah, we're looking at the back of it, correct. And that is displaying the final edit. And so what the person to the immediate left of that screen, that would be our live DJ or our switcher or our live editor.
Right there.
And the switcher is on the table, right kind of behind the Mac. Right. And so what that person is able to see on the Mac is what all the cameras are capturing, and then is choosing in real time which camera to broadcast to the larger monitor.
Okay, great.
And then to the immediate left there is camera 1 operator. And then you have the good boy professor in the blue shirt, kind of hands off and deliberately not in charge of the cameras, the switcher, the monitor. Part of my my strategy is that I want to empower the students to understand this is something that they are capable of facilitating themselves. And so once it's set up, I can just stand there and encourage them to do the thing themselves, to capture the camera, to frame the image. And both camera operators are given the same instructions. Follow the essential story. And so off to the left, you see 2 actors.
Right. So here are the actors. 1, 2. Sorry to be so obvious about this, but I think for some people, they're like, what is happening here?
Yeah. Those are the 2 actors.
I just point out too. So here's a camera operator here. Is that right?
Yep, that's correct.
This one actor. And so right now this is a 2-camera shoot, right?
Correct.
There's only 2 cameras. Okay, got it. Okay.
And you can see the little cable there running along the ground. Both cameras are running directly to the Blackmagic switcher. Yeah.
Great. Okay, so please tell us more about this process.
So this was a short improvised scene, and really all I'm doing is directing the acting as you would in a theater process. I'm not talking about angles. I'm not talking about lens sizes. I'm not talking about setups. The actors and I are engaged in a theater rehearsal process. What is the story we're telling? How can we amplify the moments? Where are the shifts in the scene? What are your objectives? What tactics are you shifting into?
Right.
That is 100% all I and the actors are concerned with. Okay. Meanwhile, Yeah, there's a legitimate filmmaking process taking place that is not distracting the actors from their theatrical rehearsal process. Blocking, entrances, exits, sitting, standing, connecting to each other, moments. I am not adjusting their performances to suit the medium. The medium is happening outside of their, outside of their.
In fact, we have a tendency in film and television to prioritize the technology in a way that is almost in direct opposition to the human to human connection that you would have.
Absolutely.
Because of course, as you know, if you do an OTS, shot, an over the shoulder shot, that other actor may not even be there, or there may be a stand-in, or there may be somebody else that you're talking to. And so or a green screen for, or a
tennis ball that you're just looking at for your eye line. Sure.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. And so for the focus line. And so so there is this tendency to, as you said in your article, acting for the camera being an entirely different style. And many acting teachers in lots of pedagogy, that's part of the curriculum, acting for the camera. What I find, as you said, particularly compelling is that, forget it. We're just capturing you, okay, in your moment in live time. And which also reminds me of when I'm seeing something that is, for example, National Theatre at home, and the way that National Theatre of England puts on these fantastic productions, right, for a live audience. But oh my gosh, how many cameras, and the production values and the ability to see close on the actors' faces. It's like an entirely different theatrical televised process. And that's somewhat where the potential of this I'm seeing as well, if they're not already implementing this in some, larger, big production houses.
And I think what's critical about this article is where it's situating itself in the development of the actor. And I think it's particularly useful in pedagogy because you have plenty of time in the rest of your career to prioritize the on-set experience and playing for the close-up or playing for the wide shot or playing for the over. But in theater school particularly, and look, most of our sustainable, successful actors with long-term careers come from the theater. There's something to be said for being able to live a story chronologically from beginning to end, from curtain up to curtain down. It begins to get dissected in the filmmaking process. But if you don't have that human endurance and stamina to thread those moments together, what you're left with is a reasonably hand-drawn facsimile of a performance, right? And so I think I don't want to say failure, but I think the challenge of starting an on-camera acting class with the notion of here's how you act for the camera, you're now introducing the concept that a performance is made up of these puzzle pieces, and that you're only responsible for this puzzle. Let's craft this puzzle piece and this puzzle piece and hope that some editor that you're never going to meet is going to be able to assemble them into some kind of human behavior performance. Right. What the switcher and this process allows us to do is to embrace the theatrical process, embrace the process of making all of your human choices, opening up all the channels, listening, responding, being affected by the moment, and allowing, not manufacturing, but allowing the camera to capture all of those things in whatever size it wants to capture it, while we're focusing on what does my script analysis say? What do my improv exercises inform about this moment? What does my Laban exercises say about being in the space and being a flick now? Whatever your actor training has provided for you as a human, organic, semi-improvisational scripted experience before it starts to get dissected for the camera. And so this is what this process allows us to do. It allows us to literally bridge the gap between live, organic, theatrical performance and the technical demands of acting for the camera.
Mm-hmm.
The byproduct is that all of those students, invariably, you want to look cool on camera. Like you want to be dope. You know what I mean? You're like, you want to be like, yeah, I want to do the things that we've grown up watching. But rather than manipulate the performance to do that, they begin to focus on what's critical. And if there's an intimacy now between you and the other character, you can allow yourself to be intimate and warm and resonant, and the camera will capture it. And so the byproduct is that you build up an immunity to contriving a performance for the camera, because you're doing it for real and the camera's doing what it do. And you don't have to like simulate what we've grown up watching to be dope for the camera, because you can just be a human being and one of the cameras will capture it. And so by the repetition of this type of exercise, they build up an indifference and an immunity to being transformed by the presence of a camera.
Mm-hmm. So the word authenticity comes to mind as you're describing this, which is, of course, that's sort of the golden, the golden chalice in the sky, right? As you want to have as an actor is that you want to be, quote, believable. And the way that you get there is, of course, by being vulnerable, by being open to being in the present, and that illustrious authenticity, because of course an audience can read it when you're not. We're very smart as audience members. We know when somebody is in the moment or not in the moment. I mean, we know how to distinguish between a quality performance and a not so. And hearing what you're saying too, that theater is about repetition, right? We know, like, you get better and better through the repetition, and sometimes it gets harder and harder to stay present through that repetition. Sure. But in film and TV, you oftentimes don't have that kind of repetition, or you don't have the kind of rehearsal process. And so I feel like there's an advantage here to that repetition in combination with this technology. Does that ring true at all?
Yeah. I mean, repetition is, we also get better in film and TV through repetition. Right. The difference being like, and that entire rehearsal process still exists, contrary to popular belief. It exists in film, right? Except that in theater, we have 4 to 8 weeks for that repetition process. On set, we have between, 4 and 28 minutes, right? So we go through all the steps of the rehearsal, but they're compressed. Right. And then, I mean, the analogy I use is that on camera, every take is like the stroke of a sketch artist's pencil. You're still drawing the same line, but you have an opportunity to refine it and perfect it. You can't abandon this line and make a circle over here. We've committed to this line. This is the line we're making. We can just refine it a little bit on camera. And so, yes, this process has the same effect, gives us the live repetition experience of theater, but again, compresses it because we're only doing it for this class exercise. But every time we move the cameras or get tighter, we're going to do it again. There's a young person in a white shirt sitting right close to the camera.
Yes.
It's sitting in the chair.
Person?
That young person is actually a body double for the actor that's performing, that's off to the left of the screen, because in this scene, this person right here. Okay. Has a moment where they look at their cell phone, and then the other actor looks over their shoulder and sees what's on the cell phone. And so the way we staged it was that this young woman sitting in the chair closest to camera pulled out the cell phone at the same moment as the person on stage, and that camera shifted over, zoomed in on a close-up of the cell phone while we were looking at the other camera. So in the edit, it looked like we were getting a close-up of the other woman's cell phone. So it was a little bit of filmmaking magic, but this setup allows you to even steal close-ups that are out of sequence and out of time in real time without interrupting the process.
Okay, so that's actually really interesting. However, I'm going to be a little contrarian on that as a theater performer. What's the use of that if we're training theater people? Why would you do that? I mean, as an audience member, I don't need to see what she's looking at on a cell phone. And also, maybe it might take away some of the mystery. Maybe there's something she's looking at and her response to it. I don't need it to be, translated in a certain way. And in fact, it might even create more conflict and tension. So why was that decision made to do that? What's the point of that?
The objective of this exercise is to bridge the gap between theater performance and film. And so it's important for the audience to see that sometimes your performance will be interrupted by the filmmaking process. So how do I maintain my intention, my presence, my connection in the scene, in the theatrical process, but suspend it long enough for some weird filmmaking thing to happen for the audience's benefit for storytelling, and then come back to me. Sometimes it literally is about the puppeteering of your physical ability as an actor to hit timing, hit blocking. I showed you 19 minutes ago exactly how you have to hold this phone so that the camera can get this shot. You have to hold that specificity and that surgical detail on camera that may not be as critical in a stage process. And so this exercise is bridging that gap between the specificity necessary for theater and the surgical precision necessary for film and TV.
And this reminds me too of Wooster Group's innovation of using all sorts of live cameras and different angles and televisions and screens and many of their performances. In fact, that's part of their signature style. And so I feel like there is almost a legacy to using this combination. Certainly theirs tends to be a little bit more rugged and more emphasis on the theatrical with a lot of other stuff going on. But there's this, and in all of these things, there is this, I guess the best term is there's almost a Brechtian like essence to it, in which if I were an audience member, right, as I'm looking at this image here, there's something fascinating to me if I were an audience member watching this, watching the performers, watching, and then the camera people watching the performers, and then the switcher. Like there is a performativity to the entire mise en scène. That for me, in my sort of, my love of experimental performance and even the Brechtian style performances, it tends to widen. You keep saying bridging the gap. I'm saying widening the gap.
Yeah.
In the sense of like this can be taken to the cameras themselves can become, as you said, as performers themselves, right?
Yeah.
In that moment.
Sure. And this kind of overlaps with something that I try to teach the students is that when we lose the live audience in a theater, it's not that they don't exist, is they're transposed. Because now in film and television, our first line of audience, yes, maybe somebody's going to watch it on their TV down the road. We won't be present for that. Or on their phone. I was going to say that, and that's a whole can of worms.
I know.
It's not even this way. Now they're going to watch it this way on these verticals, and that's a whole other can of worms. But
oh my gosh, yes.
I try to encourage the actors to still have the connection to the audience, but the audience is now camera A operator, camera A first AC, camera A second AC, the focus puller. The audience becomes the crew. Nobody's watching your performance as closely as the camera operator and the focus puller. If you lean forward, the focus puller takes note and has a job to do. If you shift and now you shift your chair over here, now the camera operator has to adjust. And so they are some of the most attentive audience members you will ever have. And so taking that experience, that third circle awareness that actors have to cultivate of, yes, the audience is also part of the scene, and how do we relate to them does transpose to the film and television experience, because the crew is now the first line of audience.
Mm-hmm. And there doesn't seem to be a director per se. Is there? Are you directing this in any way, or are the
That's interesting.
A live switcher, because that's like looking at this table here.
Yeah.
What's going on? Who's in the position of big quotes? Yeah.
Yeah, this is okay. Great question. What's important to remember is that your performance in film and television is not controlled by you alone. When you walk out on stage in a theater, what you do on that stage is what the performance is. Despite what the director may have asked of you, what came out in rehearsal, you may find a moment and switch it up in the moment, right? You are in control of your final product. In film, it's a collaborative experience. So the director can set the stage for you. They can rehearse, they can give you notes, but they can also decide what the final performance will be. Right. They can make, well, not the final say. They can make the strongest suggestion. The final say belongs to the editor.
Yeah.
The editor can decide exactly what moment of what line of what performance ends up in the final edit. So who's the director? I'm directing the scene. We kind of co-wrote it. It was like an improvised little scene. I'm directing the performances, but what I'm directing is raw material. Let's get one like this. Let's get one like this. What if this take is like, we have one that's broad and that's fireworks. What if we have one that's like the deep rushing river underneath, and there's as much energy, but I'm just providing material for the editor to pick whichever one is most effective. And so in this scenario, you can see the switcher there on the table, and this gentleman with the little yellow lightning bolt on his hoodie, who's kind of standing back because I'm running my mouth up there. But as the actors are performing,
which you can see through the large monitor here.
There you go. And so I could tell by the little red light on the switcher, that's on camera 3. That's the camera over to the right side of the theater right now. And as we're going, and this was a 2-camera setup. So the switcher can decide camera 1, camera 2, camera 1, camera 3 in this case, camera 1, camera 3. And so it's a collaboration. Who the director is and what the final performance, the result of the final performance is kind of out of your hands. And I try to encourage actors to also relinquish control. This frees you to be present with your scene partner, because you can't decide what the final moment is they're going to use. They can be on you. They can cut to your scene partner. They can cut on a close up of your toes wiggling in your sandals if they want to. You're not in control.
Yeah. Which also leads to diversity of perspective too, right? I mean, another thought that I was having is like, what if after every scene or every beat, even you had a new switcher? Or you had a new DJ. I mean, I'd be very curious is like, what if you switched the person and get a different, I mean, if it's that easy to switch back and forth, I know. Trademark.
I love that. But we got to co-teach.
I know. I think so. I mean, and of course, for anybody who's watching this in Theater Topics, the point of this conversation is mostly to emphasize my excitement for the use of technology as a pedagogical tool in the, what year is this? 2026, and where we're heading as actors, as teachers. We know, here we go with this conversation that we're sliding into, that of course you ended your article about, what's going on with AI and CGI and having to perform in front of tennis balls, right? And of course, SAG-AFTRA's latest kind of call to attention around the use of AI, the use of actors' voices or bodies through AI technology. And we've seen abuses of that so far. And to the point at which, there was a strike on some of this. And maybe you can speak a little bit more to that. I think that, again, for me personally, and working on productions that involve technology that love to interrogate this tension between human beings, technology, where does the power lie? Who holds the power? How is it distributed? When it comes to actors and art in general, right? Because visual artists are also on the front lines of this, and AI and writers, right? What just you don't have to make a full on. This is the way I live. But
here's how we resolve art and AI.
Please.
What's present for me is, I think the value in human generated art are the choices that we make. It's not so much the product and how much cooler is this AI generated concept than something a human could have made. It's what did this human choose to express in this particular moment? What are the human insights into this aspect of humanity that they chose to share with us? And so for me, the power of this process is that it's no longer result oriented. It's really about the process and giving the correct directives to the camera operators and the switcher to say, we're all now collaborating to tell this story. And the camera operator can choose what to frame. They can be close, they can be wide, they can get a close up on your glasses. And now they're out of frame, right? Zoom didn't pan down to see what you did with those glasses. And now they're back. Maybe it's a story about how Heather puts glasses on and off and where her attention is, right? And so this process allows the audience, the student audience, to see, oh, that's what camera C operator thinks is the important moment.
Exactly.
That's what camera A thinks is the important moment. And this is the switcher is actually on camera B, is on the wide shot or whatever the case is. And so I think empowering the students to make a series of creative choices is what keeps it out of the hands of an AI where they're just going to default to the lowest common denominator. And they're just going to generate what is most commonly seen on the internet.
One of the things that I was thinking about too is like, how would you differentiate an experience like this from, and I know you mentioned it a little bit in your article, when you think of something like a late night, a good example would be something like SNL or some other late night production where there's multiple cameras or some kind of talk show, and they've got these big rooms with multiple operators back there. I mean, in some ways, would you say that this is that, but in a box? What is it about this in particular that makes it uniquely special to this practice? Like, why not have all of those other? Like, what do they have that this doesn't have?
I mean, I think it is more akin to what we call a multi-camera setup, which is most commonly used in sitcoms or comedy shows like that. And there isn't much of a difference other than the fact that we can work on any kind of material and it's not result oriented. Those multicam setups are typically, they work for comedy. They work for comedy shows, sitcoms, and things like that, just because that's how we've evolved. There's something about, it's the tension between a single camera setup and a multi-camera setup, which is a bit of a misnomer because even single camera tends to use multiple cameras. But this idea that the action is happening live, it's only really been leveraged for comedy because comedy is about timing and to get the laughs out of the audience. But in this format, we can control that environment. We can capture it on film. We can get the students to understand the difference between what a close-up, a medium shot, and a wide shot does, but it can be any kind of material. We can work on drama. We can work on devised material. And we don't have to interrupt the creative acting process with the filmmaking process.
Right. Right. Well, I actually just am deeply inspired. The one thing that okay, so just to again poke another little hole in here that you mentioned in your article is something having to do with how this is beneficial to the deans and the department chairs, because you're spending less money on having assistants or other professors to do this kind of training, and that you can invest in this technology. I actually did not look up how much this costs. It's not obvious on their website. You have to go to, of course, a distributor. So I don't know if you're willing to share what the investment is for a department on this, and if it's fair to say that this saves department money when so many of us need jobs. So
yeah. Okay, compared to what is the question? It is cheaper. It is cheaper than the multi-camera news broadcast studio that UC Irvine had to invest in back when I was in grad school, right? It's cheaper than having 3 dedicated cameras, a whole television studio, and an entire editing room dedicated to on-camera work. It's cheaper. I've seen this work done with multiple cameras with professional camera operators, which is amazing, and it looks fantastic. And you can have the film crew. What this allows us to do is, for a fraction of that price, have a film studio experience operated by your students. And with the switcher, you have HDMI cables, you have an AV cart. You might have to get a couple of iPhone adapters that go from the USB-C to the HDMI, and maybe a couple of tripods. Look, for $1,000, $1,500, you have an entire $1,500 that's reusable, right? I'm assuming that the Atom is less than. Honestly, I can't remember. We can probably Google it as we speak, but it is a fraction of the cost of building an entire 3-camera studio in your college campus.
Of course, right.
And look, and to be honest, and this is a pitch I make my students all the time, is the barriers to access to making your own content have been demolished. You have a 4K film studio in your pocket. You can shoot, record, edit, color, all of that stuff right here with this device.
Amazing.
That doesn't make it easier to make good stuff. You can make stuff, but it doesn't make it easier to make good stuff. That's what makes you still competitive, is that you're now trained, you're educated, you've put in the time. You can make your creative choices that will be better than somebody else's, because you now have an artistic voice. And if you cultivate that artistic voice and you apply the technology, you can now make something dope. And there's no barrier to finding your audience.
And of course, as we know, I knew when I was in film school that I did not have very much money to invest in 16 millimeter. Yes, 16 millimeter, and I edited on an Avid, and it was very, very expensive. And I did not come from money. And so when I think about all of the talent that we have lost in the film industry, TV industry, and to a certain extent, of course, in the theater industry, because there's an exclusivity to having access to share your content, when in many ways that content is the stories of our time right now. And I very much am an advocate for whatever it takes to get quality content, of course, by having quality teachers that can teach you how to create that quality content, by having that, as you said, be at your fingertips. is a testament to, I think, where we're heading in the entertainment industry as a whole, as we've, I think, continually over the last 10 years, especially hearing from diverse voices, seeing their films, seeing the theater, noticing these playwrights that are telling stories that we've never heard before. And there's still so many out there. And I think it's because we have been implementing and experimenting with easier access to the tools of storytelling.
And that reinforces kind of one of my aspirations, is that we can use the medium of theater, because I think theater is where real human stories are developed. Film and television that is made for that market, it's a business. And so that content is generated for a purpose. The theater requires humans in a space, lights where we can see, and an audience. I think the switcher and the multi-camera setups and, this exercise in class, not to bring it back to like what we do in class, but every single person
like
that has hands-on, even if you're not the actor working in the scene, we're making theater up there, and you are part of capturing that to find your audience. And so the camera operators are learning a valuable, gathering valuable skills to be able to capture that live theatrical experience in a creatively deliberate way. It's not just the archive, that the school gets a production manager from way in the back of the theater, which honestly, it's a great record, but it sucks. Like, you can't, that's not watchable. You can have the dopest Hamlet, but like if it's one camera from the back of the theater with bad audio and you can't see faces, it doesn't capture the imagination of the audience. It doesn't bring them in. This process allows us to make theater, and everybody has had a little bit of experience of how to get in there into the story to craft it in a way that's going to reach an audience. And so it bridges that gap between live theater and finding a remote audience, like you said, like the theater companies do with these live capture productions, where they can get in close in the moments that matter. And this is now an accessible way for us to find our live theater audiences, even if they can't physically come to New York to see us.
Well, I feel like I could continue to talk to you for a very, very long time on this, it's something that I think that I would love to start utilizing, and in fact, maybe invest in my own world. We'll see, and collaborate. But I guess I want to just ask you if there's any sort of closing thoughts related to your own future use of this technology, and where you're headed, or what you have seen from your alumni, if you will, in the field in the practice of this. Have you gotten any feedback on that so far from any of them?
Yeah, I mean, I think just the comfortability and familiarity with being in front of the camera and not compromising their artistry because there's a camera present. That's what I encourage every artist to do, is no matter the medium that you're adapting for, is not to lose yourself, not to lose your unique artistic voice, and to retain your point of view. I think what is critical for us as humans, especially in this moment, and whatever your political alignments are, it's important to have a point of view and to get your voice out there. And so being able to overcome this paralysis that we sometimes face when there are cameras in our face, to be able to not capitulate to the desire to please this anonymous audience just because, all of a sudden there's a camera there and I want to adjust to what I think they want to hear, to be able to retain your creative artistic voice, to retain your human point of view and perspective, and to leverage this technology to get your voice out there. And that's ultimately what the world needs.
Well, thank you for that, Patrick. I have been just so pleased to have this conversation with you.
Same.
And I hope that everyone at Theater Topics has found this to be enlightening and possibly an avenue for training their actors in the classroom. So thank you very much.
And one last thing I'd like to say, if anybody from Black Magic is paying attention and you're interested in starting some kind of, access program to provide Black Magic Atom switchers to educational institutions, I fully support that and encourage you to get your technology out there because it's democratizing. And I think the artists of tomorrow can really use it to do good.
Excellent. Thanks, Patrick.
Thank you. Appreciate you.